Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. This is going to be kind of a, interesting little video. I just want to review Dune Part 1, June 2021 again, because it is being re-released back in theaters right now, so you can go see it again before Dune Part 2 does come out in a few more weeks. We're only like 2 weeks away. But yeah, I just wanted to do a new review of Dune Part 1 just to give you my thoughts on it before we get to Dune Part 2, because I thought it would be fun to give you my, my whole thoughts on this movie before I do review Dune Part 2 in just a couple of weeks, because I get to see it early on the 25th. I'm very excited for this movie. But I won't talk about the plot because we already know what this movie is about. And if you don't know what this movie is about, I think that's your fault, because Dune has been out since 2021, and the book's been out for many years. So if you haven't seen the first part or haven't read the book, do yourself a favor and do it, because it's simply a masterpiece. I cannot believe that we're getting Dune Part 2 in just a couple weeks. Before I get started talking about Part 1, I do want to talk about theater etiquette, because there were some really disrespectful people in my theaters. People just, turning on their phones full brightness. It's really ridiculous. So I just want to say, please be respectful to others when you're watching a movie in the theater, especially when you're in a theater, which means don't go on your phone, especially when it's on full brightness. It's really disrespectful to do that. Don't be talking. If you have to use your phone in the theater, which is interesting, why do you have to do that? Leave for a couple minutes and use it out in the lobby. It's not going to hurt you one bit just to miss a couple minutes of a movie. If you do miss a couple minutes, just go see the movie again. Support theaters, support the movie, because that's all you need to do. But yeah, be respectful to people in the movie theater. That's all I ask. I think that's, what everyone asks in, this modern day society. Just be respectful to others. I think that's, how to be kind to others in this day and age. But yeah, I do want to kind of talk about this. I did see the re-release in IMAX. I think it is also showing in 40X. But yeah, I want to do IMAX because IMAX is the only way to see this movie. I first saw this movie October 2021 when it first got released, and I did for my first watch, I did see it in IMAX. So it's kind of like just revisiting it, going back into the past, just revisiting the first watch. Because on my first watch, seeing an IMAX was just a spectacular experience, just blew my mind. But I kind of went in blind to it, like not like blind in a way. I mean, I still saw the trailers and everything, but I went in blind with the story because I didn't read any of the book before seeing it for the first time. And I still was just blown away by the spectacle, by this new sci-fi kind of masterpiece that Denis Villeneuve has, produced, because he's directed so many other great sci-fi films with Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. He's done other films that aren't sci-fi, Sicario, Prisoners. He's just done it all. He's really just in his prime right now. He's kind of in his Christopher Nolan era, I would say, and he's just nailing it, because Dune just he just went a step higher with Dune. I think Dune is my favorite Denis film, just above Blade Runner 2049 just a little bit. But yeah, when I first saw this for the first time, when it first released in 2021, I didn't know anything about the story, so I was very confused. But then I ended up seeing it like 5 more times, watching explained videos kind of explaining the movie, so I kind of understood it a little bit more. But now, after reading the book, because I did purchase the book all the way back in like November 2021, and but I didn't read the book until summer last year, because I thought we are getting the movie last fall, so I wanted to binge it, and I read it all in 1 week. So yeah, after reading the book and this being my sixth watch of Dune, I really now have a deep understanding of what Denis was trying to tell, and how he does tell the first half of the book in such a masterful way. He really knows what he's doing. He really knows when to stop it, I would say, because a lot of people were upset and where he stopped the story just with him walking off, and they're saying this is desert power, and Paul joining the Fremen with his mom, Lady Jessica. A lot of people were upset at that. I mean, I was upset with that, but I really understood why he did it and why he didn't introduce Fade Routha, because Fade Routha is in the beginning of the book, beginning with the story, with the introduction of the Harkonnens and all that. So I really do I like his decision not to include Fade in this one, and keep him for the second, keep him as a darker threat. It really does work a lot for me. And I gotta say, I think everyone just did so well in this film. Timothée Chalamet, he's just an excellent star. He's just, he's living it. He's doing such a great job. This man has Dune. He has Wonka. He had Bones and all, which wasn't a box office success, but I thought it was a great film. Call Him by Your Name. He's just really in his prime right now. Zendaya, of course, she's gonna be in this. Dune Part Two. Challenger's coming out. God, she's an Austin Butler. Austin Butler's gonna be in Part Two. Florence Pugh's gonna be in Part Two. They're gonna be great. But I will say, Oscar Isaac was one of my favorite performances from Part One, especially when I first saw it, and then I appreciate his performance a lot more the second time I saw it, just now for the re-release. And for the re-release, I do love Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. Jason Momoa really does well, and I think this man does really good when he's not playing Aquaman. Like, he knows how to play Duncan Idaho, and he's like, he does really great in his fights. Like when he's fighting the Sardaukar in that little pit, and he comes back up from the dead and takes the knife out. I was like, oh my god, this guy's badass. I was like, get it, Duncan Idaho, because Duncan Idaho is a weird name. You know, some characters in this movie have weird names, but it works out. And you know, Denny just captured everything. He captured the style, captured the characters so perfectly, and the camera work in this movie is just, you know, it took me by surprise in 2021, but now I've just studied it after every single watch. And the cinematography in this film is just some of the best I've ever laid my eyes on. You know, it's not the best. I still, you know, just love Hoytema's cinematography, but Greg Fraser is probably my second favorite cinematographer, because he just does a sublime job with immersing you into the world of Arrakis, into the world of Caladan, just into this whole new sci-fi, you know, futuristic world. And I'm very impressed just how well Greg Fraser does, you know, how well he does shoot scale, because how he shoots scale is so impressive, because you're just seeing these big ships land, and you're just seeing, you know, people exiting those ships, and just seeing how small those people are compared to these smaller ships. And then you see because you see the bigger ship in space, and the smaller ship comes out of there, and you think, oh, that's such a small ship. Then you see it land, and the people getting out of it, and you're like, god damn, that ship is huge. Like, Greg Fraser does a really good job at scale. Like, I'm really impressed with how he does scale in these movies, and I cannot wait to see how well he does shoot Dune Part 2. Because if from my memory is correct, Dune Part 1 won 6 Oscars, and I think Greg Fraser did win Best Cinematography. But the year was also pretty weak, but I'm you know, pretty sure that he's going to win cinematography for next year's Oscars, 2025. Long ways away, but Dune Part 2 is going to sweep. And, you know, the score, what else have we got to say? Hans Zimmer is, you know, my greatest of all time in film composers. You know, I know a lot of people know John Williams, but Hans Zimmer for me is my favorite, because he does some of my favorites. Interstellar is my favorite score. He of course did that, but this is also one of my favorites from him, because he's so inventive with here. He even said that he made like new instruments for this score. It feels so, you know, old. The score feels kind of old, but it also feels futuristic at times, which I was just very impressed with. And also, can we just appreciate the bagpipes? Like, the bagpipe scene when they get to Arrakis is just absolutely, it shouldn't work, but it works so well, and it's fascinating, mesmerizing, just magnificent on how he does the score here. I think Dune Part 2 is going to have kind of the same score, but, you know, a little bit of new stuff. I mean, you don't have to do a lot. You don't have to do a whole new score, because you already built the score for the first one. But I'd love to see him do a little bit of new score for that one, because I think that, you know, him just building on this one's just going to be even more excellent. And I do want to talk about some standout scenes for me. Just, you know, after seeing this movie 6 times, you just have some scenes that you just can't get over. Some scenes that just, you know, just grab you, just give you some goosebumps. Because this movie just gives you goosebumps the whole entire time. It's an epic journey, kind of epic odyssey. Frank Herbert really did kind of like turn the wheel for sci-fi. This is kind of like the Lord of the Rings of sci-fi. Star Wars is nothing compared to this. Star Wars basically copied this. Dune was basically the first of its time for anything big sci-fi, and Frank Herbert really did a great job. It's hard. It must have been very hard for Denis to do, you know, an adaptation of this, but he did it so well. And some of my favorite scenes are, of course, the opening. I feel like the opening just sets you up for what this world's going to be, how dark this story is going to be, the whole setup. This movie's like, kind of like a whole setup, but it's so good at the world building is just so fascinating. How everything just goes around here. Everything on Caladan is crazy cool. I love how Caladan's shot. I love how Caladan looks. I just want to go to that planet. And, you know, the first sighting of a sandworm and the spice harvester scene, where Paul has to go save those people at the spice harvester, and he's like, I can hear your footsteps, Gurney, I can recognize them. And you see that sandworm come out and take the harvester down. I was like, oh my goodness, that just gives you goosebumps every time you see it. And I'm like, I can never get over how beautiful that scene is. Because especially in IMAX too, the score is just pounding. The IMAX expand ratio. The IMAX is the only way to see the re-release, and IMAX is probably going to be the only way to see Part 2, because the expanded ratio adds just so much flavor to this, which is kind of odd, because I don't know why they didn't do the expanded ratio on the, you know, 4K physical release, because, you know, Christopher Nolan does the 4K expanded ratio. I don't know why Warner Bros. Didn't do it for Denis Dune. It doesn't make any sense. It adds so much flavor to the movie. Another couple standout scenes for me are in the sand tent, kind of where Paul and Lady Jessica are. It's Paul seeing, parts of the future. I thought that's a very strong scene. And Paul versus Jameis at the end is a very strong scene for Paul's character, how he evolves into a Fremen. And then the ending. Of course, the ending, kind of a cliffhanger. Such a big scene, get to see that desert power, get to see people riding on the sandworms. And you're like, how are they doing that? I want to see Paul do that. And guess what? Dune Part Two, we're gonna get to see Paul do that. And I will just say, before we talk about Dune Part Two, Dune Part One is a masterpiece. One of my favorite science fiction films of all time. My favorite Denis Villeneuve movie of all time. It's easily a 10 out of 10. I'm not really gonna put any number on screen because it's just a masterpiece. If you haven't seen it yet, I would really recommend you go see the re-release in IMAX before Dune Part 2, because Dune Part 2 is going to be a spectacle. Dune Part 2 is so lucky because it's literally the first big action blockbuster of the year, so a lot of people are going to go see it. So see Dune Part 1 before Dune Part 2, that's what I'll say. And yeah, let's talk about Dune Part 2, the sneak peek that I was able to see after Dune Part 1 ended. It basically opened up with, Timothy, Zendaya, Florence Pugh, Austin Butler talking about Dune Part 2 and all they got to do on set. And you got to see a little, seeing IMAX also was just crazy. You got to see the full scene of Paul riding his first sandworm. It's like an 8-minute scene, and it's simply magnificent to see. And it feels so much better than the first film, which feels odd to say because the first film's already a masterpiece of a science fiction film. But this one when you're watching it, it just feels like there's so much more flavor in here. The colors just feel more vibrant and all that. It just feels like it's going to be such a different film because the first one's very dense, emotion wise, because there's so much happening. This one feels like it's just going to be like, oh yeah, all out war. We're on Paul's side. We're ready to fight. And Paul riding his first sandworm is just magnificent. And you get that little scene with the thumper. Also from the first one, the thumper. Any scene with the thumper calling the sandworm just like gets your body going. It's like boom, boom. It's great. I love the thumper. Especially in IMAX, you just feel it in your seat. It's like, oh my god, is he calling a sandworm to the damn theater? I can literally feel a sandworm. Like you feel so immersed in this world. So I just love that. And you get to hear Denis Villeneuve talk about Part 2, and you just can tell by the way he talks about the movies and all that. He loves to make movies. And you can tell that this project in particular means a lot to him. He literally says long live cinema at the end, which is, it means a lot for me because I just love covering movies, love going to the theater. And when I'm looking at Denis and just looking at his films, I see a lot of Christopher Nolan in him. It feels like he is kind of like the new Christopher Nolan, making some big blockbuster science fiction pictures. I'm not trying to say this to put down anyone or like compare him a lot, but I kind of see a lot of similarities in them and their films and just how they make some big epic films. And I'm really proud of Denis for, just starting to make some huge blockbusters. I'm very happy that he did get to make Part 2 because it's going to be a masterpiece. And then at the end, we got to see a little bit of a new kind of 30-second trailer for Dune Part 2. And man, this movie might be one of my new favorites of all time if it really does hit the spot. And it might be the movie of the decade because just looking at this new trailer at the end of this footage, it's literally just action on top of action. Because the first one is setup. It's a lot of setup, a lot of world building, as I said, and it does a great job at doing that. But the second part of the book and the second movie is just going to be action on action, and just seeing some new characters: Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken, and then we all know there's going to be another new surprise character in there. That's going to be interesting. This movie is literally going to be the return of the King of Dune, and also we have Dune Messiah coming probably in 5 to 10 more years after this. It's crazy how much setup Dune Part 1 has led to, but it's going to be all worth it in the end. I mean, I took my two friends to see Dune, this re-release, and this was their first time seeing it, and I was really jealous because they're seeing Dune Part 1 2 weeks before they're seeing Dune Part 2, and I'm like, I had to wait 2.5 years. I literally had to wait 2.5 years through 3 delays. This is just ridiculous. I'm so jealous, even though I'm also seeing it in 2 weeks, but just having to wait 2.5 years for this masterpiece is just kind of sucky. But I will say I've seen a leak of a certain character and who plays that character in Dune Part 2. And if it is true, Denis has cooked. Let's just say that he's cooked some nice work in the theater. And if it is true, we're going to have a lot of happy people, including me. and I just cannot wait for Dune Part 2. So yeah, that's my little review or talk about Dune Part 1 re-release in IMAX, and also the Dune Part 2 sneak peek. Just a little bit away. It's about 2 weeks away for the main audience to see Dune Part 2. I'm seeing it like 12 days away. Very excited. Let me know what your thoughts are about Dune Part 1. Are you excited for Dune Part 2? Let me know down in the comments. If you guys did enjoy this mini review, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 600 subscribers. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.